everybody to A Balanced Life here at Black Star Network, and I am super excited about the topic that we are talking about today. You do know that broken crayons still color. Oftentimes, we have a difficulty in discovering not only how to pick up our pieces, but even making a decision whether or not we want to go and search for them. Yep, I know it is a process within itself, but today we're going to be joined by our guests who are going to talk to us about what it means to really figure out who we are. Of course, as we enter into Black History Month, there are so many things in our community that plague us, but we want to walk through step by step. How do we balance all of the nuances of our lives? We are joined together by Charlotte Avery, Dr. Tierney, Stacey Owens, and Pastor JT. Welcome in, everyone.
Hello. Hey, everybody.
Hey, oh, it's so good to see all these smiling faces. But you know, sometimes it is difficult to figure out how to move life forward. We are literally, 32 days into the new year, and January has really hit and taken some people by storm. It's not a repeat of 2020, but for some, it is shaping up to really be very difficult. I want to ask you guys a question. How are you in this new season, 2023, discovering how to move yourself forward with all that we faced and experienced getting into this post-pandemic era? I'm going to start with Pastor JT. How, sir, are we to move forward now that we're almost on the outer cusp of everything that we've been to and through the last 3 years?
Wow. So to honestly answer your question, I think the first thing that we have to do in moving forward is establish your current now, right? Because I think if people are still trying to go and grab how life was in 2018, 2019, you're going to be sadly mistaken because that world no longer is. So the only thing that we're doing is setting ourselves up for failure, really. The best thing to do right now is establish your make the best out of that. And then I'll take that further because you mentioned about where we are in the year and how for some 2023 came in with a little 2022 on the bottom of his shoe. And we found ourselves still dealing with some tabs that were still left open, facing some challenges that we weren't expecting to face, because you step into the new year, you're believing that everything is brand new. I got a new sheet of paper, but it's a lot that has gone on in just this short amount of time. The first thing that I would ask you to do is don't put yourself too far into the year. So don't go and try to grab a solution for July, and we haven't even gotten through the first quarter. And then take a second and just look over what has happened in these last few weeks and see what you can learn from it. Because what I don't want you to do is lose the value of right now. Because you have an opportunity right now to maybe even start to change the course of the ship and move it in the right direction. But if we have 1 foot planted in yesterday and 1 foot planted in tomorrow, we miss the opportunity of today.
You make a very valid point because oftentimes we do want to just keep things rolling and moving. You get into the comfort zone and you often don't know how to get off of that roller coaster. Charlotte Avery, talk to us about that for a minute, because moving forward isn't always easy and people don't really know what pieces to pick up to move forward and which ones to kind of sit to the side until you're really prepared to get into them.
You're absolutely right, Dr. Jacquie. For me, I'm a priority person and not a to-do list person. So for me, moving forward into 2023 really looks like, what are my priorities? It's not that my priorities in 2022 didn't matter, but the thing is that priorities always change. Because there's always something that I'm working on that can now be completely flipped around because of life circumstances between, spouse, children, just all the things that come with being a mom of 7 and, managing a business and working with clients and all that. And so for me, I look at 2023 as, what are my priorities that I have and my goals that I have set forth for the year. And I look at that as, if I didn't accomplish certain things from 2022, they were meant to go with me into 2023. But I have to really look at, what things were meant to stay gone. And for me not to really worry about it and cause myself angst because I didn't accomplish something or I didn't do something. If what I didn't accomplish then is still a priority for now, then I just take that and I put it on my priority list. Again, it doesn't mean, and it might not go at the top of the priority list just because I'm bringing it in from 22 to 23, because the priority and the positioning may have changed. And so for me, I'm looking at priority, I'm looking at positioning, and I'm looking at, kind of what Pastor JT said about, the moment right here and now. And so, I think that if anything that we should have learned in the past few years is, that time matters, people matter, and all of those things that are really, really important, the value of the things that really matter the most. And so for me, that's how I prioritize. That's how I position myself in the things that I say that I am or I am not doing, and being okay with saying I was going to do that. That's not serving me now, so I'm not doing it anymore.
That makes so much sense. I hope that our audience is listening, because we really are in this season of saying, how do we put those things on our plate that we can actually handle? What can we do and what really matters most? Stacey, what do you have to say about that? Because oftentimes we just kind of throw it all up in the air, see where it falls, and then pick something out of a pile.
I do that too, but I was going to say that I have a lot of people and a lot of things that plug into me. And so in order for me to keep moving, I just have to have a constant check on what is the baggage that I'm carrying. Because sometimes when people plug into you, they're bringing the things that are really beneficial for them or yourself. But then sometimes they can plug some stuff into you that just become heavyweight baggage that's not even in my controllable to be able to control or do. So I just have a lot of reference points where I take time to say, what's sitting in my lap right now? What part of this can I remove? What part of this can I control? What part of this shouldn't even been something I should have been thinking about anyway? And once I clean that up a little bit, it lightens the load, and then I can keep moving. But the key is you just have to keep moving, reflecting, and keep moving, and allowing people to carry their own baggage and junk as well. So,
I definitely can identify with that. Dr. Tierney, what say ye?
So I started 2023 focusing on me, and not from a selfish standpoint, but from the standpoint of before I could move forward, I had to pause. I had to take a pause. I had to take a minute. If you follow me on social media at Dr. Tierney, you'll notice that right at the top of the year, I had to take a step back and I went to the beach. I went and hung with friends. I went on vacation right at the top of the year. Oftentimes we get sucked into this idea that, okay, it's a new year. Let me hit it. Let me grind. Let me go to the gym. Nope. Sometimes in order to move forward, we have to take a step back and really assess ourselves. Where are we? Who are we in this new season that we're walking through? 2022 kicked my behind. So I had to stop and say, okay, ma'am, what do you need right now? What do you want right now? Take a beat, take a breath, and then move forward. Like my sister Stacey said, there's a lot that is plugged into me right now. There's so many different hats and roles that I wear, but if I'm not taking care of myself, then I'm no good to anyone or anything that's around me. So sometimes to move forward, we got to take a step back and assess.
Taking a step back isn't always easy. When we come back after the break, we're going to talk about how do we match energy? Who are we attracting to us? And is it something we keep or something we let go? When we're back after the break.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Welcome back, everyone, to A Balanced Life. As you can tell, we're in this season of really discovering how to balance all the pieces of our lives. They could be whole pieces or they could be broken pieces. And if you're like me, we have a few broken pieces that we've discovered that we can still pick up and use. But being able to do that often means determining energy in our lives. What is the energy that we're dispelling out or displacing out to people? And then what is some of the energy that we're taking in? I tell you, I really saw this meme not too long ago, and it says, I match energy. So go ahead and show me how we're going to act today. I think that that's interesting because oftentimes we take that in a negative. So we want to give back what people give to us. And so now it's time for us to say, can we do that in a positive way so that we can balance ourselves and move our life forward? I want to ask Stacey about that for a moment because you mentioned something quite interesting, Stacey. You said that you have people that plug into you. Can you talk to us about two things? One, that positive energy that you get from being around people that are in your village and in your tribe. And then sometimes that energy that pulls on you and drains you and how you recover from that.
Let me tell you, when you were talking and you talked about matching energy, you know, I had to learn the space that I'm in right now because I used to match energy too. So if you came in here with some negative stuff, I was ready for all the smoke and I was going to right back to you. And what I learned is that, you know, that became very draining because what you give out is what comes back to you. So like attracts like, right? So if you come in with a negative space and I match that negative energy, then 2 seconds later, somebody else coming with more negative energy. And then I was just always just matching negative stuff. So I had to learn that when you come to me negative, I'm going to lead with love. Try to figure out what you're trying to get from this space. And then I'm going to try to bring you some joy and some hope and try to give it back to you in the way that I would have wanted you to bring it to me. So that can hopefully put you in a better space. But it also, when you walk away, I've put it out in the atmosphere that what I need to come to me is things that's going to make my energy, you know, vibrate on a higher level. So it can be very draining when you are surrounding yourself with negative people. For me, with all the people that I have around me, I think awareness, because sometimes people be in a low vibration and they don't even know. It's just how they are, how they think. That's their tone. They're just being who they are. And so I'm real good now with saying to folks, you know, pointing it out, like, are you okay? And they'll say, oh, that's just how I talk. Well, let's use some different words. Let's talk about some other ways that you can see that. Instead of seeing your glasses half empty and let's see it half full. Or, you know, instead of seeing this as an oh, wait, me moment, how about if we change the narrative a little bit? That's a little hard to do for some people because some people, you know, they thrive off of trauma or they lived in trauma and so long that that's all they know how to function in. So I think just having an awareness of saying, you know what, you sort of doing something to my so let me at least let you know.
That makes perfectly good sense. You know, we find ourselves, we're one individual and we find ourselves in so many spaces. We have our general public people, we have our workspace people, we have our family people, and we have our church people. So we oftentimes can be chameleon. I want to ask Pastor JT about that because, you know, we're back in church and we're doing all these various things. How do we handle the energy when we're working in ministry or being around people in our groups and in our organizations, Pastor?
It's interesting. It really is interesting. One of the things that I will say that has really helped me, I think it was a quote, I believe, I don't want to misquote. It could have been Maya Angelou or Oprah Winfrey, one of the two. But I think somebody said that when somebody shows you your true color or their true color, believe them. Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that allows energy to be drained from us unnecessarily and rapidly is when we expect people to be something or someone that they cannot even be for themselves or they won't portray, and we're trying to force them to be a different way. Or we have such rose-colored lens, we just believe that everybody in the world wakes up in the morning, has meditation, listening to Mozart, their blood pressure is leveled and they are, you know, under their BMI number. And we know that ain't true. And I think what happens is we put ourselves in a position to allow a swinging door, a cycle of trauma of sorts, So I think when you're working with people, if it's in a professional setting, if it's at church, if it's in your social organizations, man, if it's your family, allow them to be them, figure out who they are. And especially if they repeat that, that's them. And then figure out what compartment they need to be placed in your life. And I believe that helps protect you from unnecessary pain. There's a song, No Pain, No Gain, but hey, I'm in a space right now. If I got to gain through pain, keep that. I'm going to figure out the areas that I'm willing to stress myself in. And it definitely ain't going to be people.
You bring up a valid point, because being in control really starts at the beginning of the year. And the moment that you allow yourself or give permission for someone else to take control of your decisions and how you live and how you think, you literally can put yourself in a tailspin the remainder of the year. Charlotte, as it relates to family, how do we guide people who are broken to help other people not break other people in the process? Because oftentimes our family is where we find the most hurt.
Oh my goodness, you are absolutely right. Because it's really the people who we love, who we share time and space with the most. They're really the people who can hurt us the most. Other people, you'd be like, oh, I don't really care about them. They're not really significant. But it's really the people who we live with, who we're sharing time and space with, that can really hurt and cut us deeply. And so, and I've learned these lessons, time and time again, because, in my household, when you have a household of 9 people, it's a lot of hurt feelings can happen. It's trying to help people navigate from, what is really, a real feeling versus a false feeling. Did somebody mean to say or do something? And so, for me, it's, one thing that, Stacy was talking about is awareness. It's really, having people awareness, even of the people in your household, and being very cognizant of who they are individually versus who what their role is in the family. And so for me, I always have to remember that everybody in my household has a different personality. All of my children have different personalities, although they may be similar. So how I deal with them, how I nurture them and love them and chastise them and have intimate conversations with them and teach them is completely different. I can't be the same way with Lim that I am with Isabel, or, all those different things. And so I think we have to be mindful of the people that we're around, but also, I'm very much aware that it's really about the relationships that I'm trying to build, and not just the here and now relationships, but the relationships that I'm trying to have and hold on to, even when my loved ones leave my home, even when my children go to college. Am I, making it so that when they leave to go to college, when they're married and have children one day, are they going to want to come back and be here in this warm place that I've really tried to create? And so, I think that when you're talking about investing time and you're talking about growing relationships, it's really the investment that you're trying to make. And how important is that inside your household? Because it has to matter, and it has to start at home first.
Absolutely. Oftentimes what happens in the home is outside in the public, especially since we're all back outside. Dr. Tierney, talk to us for a little bit about the imposter syndrome and how oftentimes we wear these masks and are almost chameleon-like wherever we find ourselves. How do we balance the idea that sometimes we have to be chameleon-like, but other times we're still searching for our authentic self?
Mm-hmm. And I think you hit it right there in the last thing that you said, searching for your authentic self. When we don't know who we are, then of course we're going to be a chameleon in any situation that we, find ourselves in, because we're just trying to fit in. We're just trying to fit in with this group. We're trying to fit in that, with that group. So we're not really being our authentic self, because we're just people pleasing. We're trying to get them to like us. And so let me put this mask on today, and let me put my church mask on tomorrow, and let me put this mask on, or the boss mask on, or, and that gets exhausting. That gets extremely exhausting. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things as we're talking about, going into this new year, accomplishing things, how to handle, people around us. The first thing I was going to say boundaries, but before boundaries, we have to accept some accountability. Mm-hmm. We have to have an awareness of ourselves, the things that we're doing, and hold ourselves accountable. Everything can't be about what everybody else said. Mm-hmm. A lot of times people match energy because it's, so that's what you doing, so this is what I'm gonna do. Because we're not holding ourselves accountable enough to say, you know what, that's not who I am. That's not how I want to show up. That's not, there's been plenty of times there's things that I want to say and I'm like, let me hold myself accountable, to the level and the standard and integrity that I know of who I am. But if we don't know who we are and we're not authentic first with ourselves, then we can't hold ourselves accountable. So we're just wearing these masks, cutting people left and right, hurt people. And then we got a whole mess on our hands, so we have to be authentic. We have to be aware of ourselves and we have to hold ourselves accountable before we can even begin to fully interact with others.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Before we go into the break, I want to ask each of you, I'm going to start with Dr. Tierney and just go back up. If we had to do a matching energy challenge, what would you share with our audience? Something either to put in their toolkit or not to do with the matching energy. What do we not want them to do?
Don't match energy.
Don't match
energy at all. I don't even try to match energy, because if you're trying to match somebody else's energy, then you are oftentimes negating your own energy. You're ignoring what your energy is saying. Sometimes if we're matching energy, that means we have to go low instead of going high. So don't even try to match energy.
Stacey.
Yeah, I was going to go from the, identify what it is that you want and be clear about it and just stay focused in that area. Don't get in that space of trying to match somebody else's energy because, you might have something I don't even want. So why I want to match
it? Well said, Charlotte.
I would say, give back what you want to receive. Give back what you want to receive. If you want to receive love, then give love and show love. If you want kindness, then, give kindness and show kindness. All of that, like just give back give out what you want to receive to come back to you, because the law of reciprocity is real.
Yes, it is. Pastor JT.
So I'd say ditto to what everybody said, but I'm going to throw this one out there, just really kind of just throwing off the whole positive spiel. Make sure you're not the one that's giving out dirty energy. Mm-hmm. Because you're talking about matching energy when somebody may be matching your energy. Mm-hmm. Because it's very easy for us to see the log that may be in somebody else's eye and not even deal with the forest that's in ours.
Absolutely. I think that's a perfect segue as we move into this break. When we come back, let's talk about that for a moment. Not only are we trying to balance our broken pieces, but how do we build with those broken pieces when we're back after the break?
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Welcome back, everyone, to A Balanced Life. And as you can tell, discovering how to move your life forward with all the pieces that we have can often sometimes be daunting. But as you can see, there is a way to be able to not only pick up your pieces, but to build with those pieces. And sometimes we're trying to discover who are we attracting in our lives, the people, the friends, our family, because you have to get rid of them as well as keep them. But then also there are the jobs that we're trying to attract, the relationships that we want, the communication and leadership styles that we need in order to be able to move forward. So let's for just a moment talk about, we said a little bit about this imposter syndrome and what we can do and not do with it. But how do you discover, Dr. Tierney, to build with your broken pieces? Some people don't have the luxury of starting from scratch. They just have to work with what they have. How do we do that?
Mm-hmm. So I always like to say, we're never really starting from scratch. We might have to start over, but we're never really starting from scratch. The things that we've learned, the mistakes that we've made, the wins, the highs, the lows, all of that has taught you something. All of that has shown you something, and it may be broken pieces and fragments. It might not have turned out the way that you wanted it to, but all of that is something that you can use to build. If you think about some of the most beautiful art pieces that grace our homes, a lot of them are mosaic pieces. A lot of those are different colored glass pieces, different colors that have been blended together that the artist has used to make this beautiful artwork. You rarely see one solid piece of something and okay, that's art. It's usually a combination of colors and textures and, that really makes this beautiful artwork. Your life is no different. Your life is this beautiful artwork that our Heavenly Father, the potter, is putting together. And so it's going to look a little different than what we might have thought it was, but it's nonetheless just as beautiful. So when we get into that imposter syndrome, it's because we think we don't have enough. We think that we're missing something. We think that because this didn't turn out perfectly, or I have this piece of fragment over here and this unfinished business over there, that we can't be used. And I beg to differ. It's those very pieces that come together to make the most beautiful life that you've ever seen. You just have to allow that to happen in that way. Stop looking at it from, I have to start from scratch. No, honey, everything works together. All of it. If you allow it to come together, it will be the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. And sometimes we have to take a step back in order to get perspective. This is why I always say the coach has a coach. I have a coach and a therapist. Okay. Because sometimes I need someone else to come in to say, hey, did you know you can use this like this and put this with this, and that'll make a beautiful that. So inviting people, the right people into your situation with all of these broken pieces to help you see the beauty that lays around you.
Mm-hmm. And that's a life lesson that people don't always get. And I'm going to invite Charlotte into this conversation because it's true. We are a sum total of all of our life experiences. And, similar to that analogy of the mosaic that's being put together, sometimes our life is like a hologram. You can be too close to it and you can't see what's really going on. But the further you step back, you're able to see the bigger picture. Charlotte, how is it that in your role and work as a life strategist that you help people really discover to see the bigger picture of their lives and then build with some of those broken pieces?
So I really like what Dr. Tierney said, because, one thing that I try to teach, the women that I work with is, when it comes to broken pieces, you don't have to always necessarily throw a broken piece away. A broken piece can be reused. And so sometimes it's really changing perspective on that piece that's broken and bringing it back into the present and the here and now and saying, okay, well, if I turn it this way, or if I used it for something, how else will this serve me? How else will it serve the people that I'm serving, right? And so I think, when it comes to things like this, I'm always reminded, because, I deal with a lot of women who feel like, okay, I'm a wife now and I'm a mom now, and all the things that I used to do, they just really don't matter because, they're just not important because now my life has shifted. And I always remind women of this. I always say, what? The Proverbs 31 woman, she had purpose, hopes, and dreams. She was incredible. She was an entrepreneur and a business owner, and she was known in the marketplace, and people admired her husband because of her. And her children, yes, they rose up and called her blessed because of all of the things that she was doing. Her life didn't just stop. Her past, the things that she was doing didn't just stop, that she was doing before she became a wife and a mom. Those things didn't just stop. She brought them into her journey. And so I always tell women, listen, look at where you've been and how can you bring those things into your present so that it can serve you as a woman and a wife and a mother, because you were a woman with purpose, hopes, and dreams first. before you became a wife and a mom. And so I try to take people kind of back to the things that they may have tossed and thrown away, because sometimes I found, even with myself, I found myself saying, okay, I used to do these things. I don't do these things anymore. And that's not really what God intended for me. He intended for me being a wife and a mom, for those things to enhance who I was and my purpose and my hopes and my dreams, not for me to just put them and throw them away on the back burner. And so sometimes I feel like as women, who are very purposeful, even working women who work outside the home, in the home, or women who are just stay-at-home moms, I think it's easy for us to forget where we were, feeling like, oh, well, patriarchal points of views and, biblical standards say, oh, I should just cast all this away and now become this Proverbs 31 woman, not really understanding the dynamics of what the Proverbs 31 woman really was. And so one of my goals is to always take women back and say, okay, let's really dissect this Proverbs 31 woman situation so you really understand are reminded that your purpose, hopes, and dreams didn't just change because you became a wife and a mom. So let's go back and, some of those things that you threw into the sea of forgetfulness that you thought you weren't ever supposed to do again, let's go back and get those things and see how they really can serve you while they're also serving your family and while they're also serving the world in a bigger way.
That's a perfect segue for Pastor JT to jump into this conversation, because I was thinking about having a faith moment, but since y'all have already gone there, as you were talking, Charlotte, I was reminded about the clay in the potter's hands. And there's a part of that scripture that says, and the clay was marred in the potter's hands. And oftentimes we think he started with this perfect piece of clay. Pastor JT, talk to us about marred clay.
If you go through the Bible, it's 66 books. There is nobody that was used by God that was perfect other than Jesus. And Jesus kind of was a special guy, right? But everybody else, imperfect. I mean, even starting from Abraham, his bout with doubt, he ended up having a child and that wasn't the seed and had to now wait. And, that caused a sibling rivalry all the way to Moses being a murderer, having a stuttering problem, Jonah having to spend a long weekend inside of the belly of a fish because he was being disobedient. Not even to mention going to the New Testament, when you think about Paul, who was once Saul, who this dude was a murderer. Like he legit was in them streets killing people, but yet he was preaching the word of God. And this is the thing that I will say. When you feel like you're perfect, you have a feeling that you don't need God. That imperfect spot makes you pray a little bit more. It makes you want to dig a little bit deeper. It makes you want to aim to be better today than you were yesterday. But this is the thing that I want to challenge somebody to do right now, because as I've heard Dr. Tierney, I heard Charlotte, the thing that kept ringing in my ear, a broken color steals color. Even a mirror that is broken, you pick up a piece of the mirror, you can still see your reflection. I just need to let somebody know right now, stop comparing your color to somebody else's color, because that's the thing that's really bothering you. Because I need to tell you, maybe nobody else will, but even those that we may look at on social media and think that they have arrived, man, people only giving us their ESPN highlight reel. Like nobody is not giving you the days that it's not working or all of the no's they got. Everybody now want to talk about, contracts coming, checks coming in the mail. Man, think about all them no's you got before you got that one yes. Think about all of the fumbles that you made along the way before you got to the touchdown. And because nobody is promoting the grind, the getting from the 1 yard line on this side and having to go all the way 100 yards down to get to the other side, we're only looking for the big play. We're only looking for the touchdown. And if we continue to live life like that, my brother, my sister, it's going to be a hard, depressing life. But man, you get 4 chances just to get 10 yards. And if you keep that mindset, I'm giving a football analogy, but if you keep that mindset and just do a little bit every day to get you to that end zone, you're going to score. So I don't want you to get lost in the comparison that we have grown accustomed to now, because social media has kind of put us in this unnecessary depressive state all day, every day. Look in the mirror, even if it's the piece, you can still see a reflection, and that reflection is beautiful. And make sure that that piece is put in the hands of the master. And if you do that, everything is going to be a masterpiece.
I like that. So come on in here, Stacey, because something that Pastor JT just said reminded me of some of the things I've saw in your book. And it related to people discovering how to shift their perspective and their mindset. Now, that doesn't always happen easily. How are you guiding people to shift their mindset so that they can see that they can still color with their broken pieces and build with those fragments?
Wow, it's just it's your level of awareness. Like, are you willing to accept, do you even know your broken pieces? Have you taken time to identify your places of hurt, or your places that you feel like your emotions that's attached to your broken self? I think a lot of times we walk away from it and we just hide from it, or we live in it and just milk. We just wallow in it because that's where we're comfortable at. So I'm always helping folks to just identify, what is that thing that hurt you? What is the thing that hindered you? And then have you started your own personal healing process to that? I think in my younger years, I had a lot of rage built in me, and I didn't know why. I mean, it didn't take much for me to get angry if I felt you was doing me wrong, or if I felt you were lying to me or something like that. And I would just, go off on you. So I had to really do some self-reflection to figure out, what is the thing that's hurting me most? So I'll use me as an example, because I know everybody else don't have these problems. So, I won't talk about nobody else. But I had to really think back in terms of, all the way back to my childhood. Like, what is the thing that happened when I was younger that caused all of this anger or rage or these emotions, or what is it that's triggering my fears or my, inadequacies? And once I started paying attention to when things was happening in my life and that sort of bubbled up, I had to say, what's going on here? What can I compare that to? And then after I started becoming a little bit more aware of myself, then now I can control that. Now I can start reshifting the way I see it and think about it. I can self-regulate now because I have control over it. So the thing that was done to me that hurt me don't have to control me once I identify what it is and make a decision that I need to flush it and let it go. So Dr. Tyranny loved to tell you guys, you need a coach or a therapist, or you need to have some self-reflection, or if you can't do it yourself, you have to have someone that can help talk you through that and help you flush those negative thought patterns or those negative traumas or those broken pieces. They're not going to go anywhere. Everybody in your story has a broken piece, a piece of trauma or something. It's all about, can I get control over it? Can I accept it and not let it control me?
Well said. When we come back after the break, let's talk about this thing called analysis paralysis, when we're back after the break.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance.
We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Welcome back, everybody. And as you can tell, that these are some great tips for you to put in your toolkit as we begin to narrow down how we can work with our broken pieces, work with our hurt, work with our shame, work with all of these things that we seemingly say are keeping us from moving forward. I want to invite everybody back in because this theme has run through our conversation, the analysis paralysis. We are constantly comparing ourselves to our family members, our co-workers, our neighbors, our people in our organizations. We're looking at, these TikTok videos and trying to figure out how can we do this, that, and the other. I'll start with Stacey because you got us to a really great space. Trying to always analyze yourself, that measurement can be a dangerous stick. Talk about how do you gauge when enough is enough?
You gauge when enough is enough when it starts impacting the way that you're moving in a day, or you're impacting the things that you're not being able to attract to yourself. I think when you start talking about comparing yourself to others, Pastor JT couldn't have said it any better when he said people are showing you those happy spaces in those 30-minute little TikTok videos or whatever. I mean, I do the TikTok thing every now and then because people tell you that's how people can start to understand you as a person. But let me give you a flashlight right now. If you watching my social media, then you want to be like me, you better go in the comments and ask me the parts about me that you might not want, because that little thing you do for TikTok, that's just so you can see the good side. Like you said, you don't see the nose, you don't see the crying at night, you don't see the hardships, you don't see that kind of thing. So stop wanting what other people want. And when you're gauging yourself, be honest with yourself. Don't be delusional. Like, what are your gifts and talents? What can you do? What are you doing? And then are you truly doing it? Because I tell you, that son of mine, he is so gifted and talented, and he's always talking about all the things that he want to do. And he's like, Mom, I'm looking for a job. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. But you sleeping all day. Are you really doing it? So you got to just really reflect and ask yourself, are you being even truthful with yourself? And then when you can't be truthful for yourself, listen to what people around you are saying. And if you hear something more than 2 times, on that 3rd time, you might want to slow down and say, okay, let me look at that area, because now it's a pattern. So what are your patterns? Find that out. And that can help you regulate when it's enough or when you need to go in another direction. But be honest and not delusional.
Absolutely. Charlotte Avery, how are you balancing what you do in that space and guiding your children? Because you are probably not the only person who may be watching with 7 kids. And if you have only one child, what Charlotte is about to tell you is going to bless your life. Charlotte Avery, how is all this working and you preparing your kids and stopping them from gauging themselves according to other people in their peer group?
So I always tell my children, nobody can beat you being you, and I tell myself this too, like nobody can beat me being me. And I don't compare myself to anybody else, because although somebody else might have 7 children or 9 children or 5 children or 3, listen, how I do things is how I do things. And I'm glad that what you're doing is working for you. And I'm glad that you're growing your business the way that you're growing it, with your 2.5 children. But over here, Charlotte is managing a household, a husband, children, work, and all kinds of other things. And so, I tell my children, listen, nobody can beat you being you. And I always tell my children, I go back to, the word, you are fearfully and wonderfully made, and God completely molded and shaped you. And he's continuing to do that in his way, in his perfect time. And you don't have to be anybody else. It's like even when I wrote the book for my son, Afro Izzy, I specifically wrote that book because he is clear about who he is. He's clear that he doesn't want a haircut. He's clear that he wants an afro, like for however long that he wants it for. That's great. Be you, and don't let anybody beat you being your best, great, and wonderful self. Because listen, every day is not a great day in the land of Charlotte. But let me just tell you this, like I do my best to be my best because I know what's at the end of it if I am or am not my best self, whether that's my best self for me, because I have to be my best self for me first. And you can't be your best self for anybody else until you get to a place of being your best self for you. And what that looks like for you is going to look different for somebody else. And that's okay. Live in that, rest in that, and give yourself grace in that, knowing that all things come in God's time, and you don't have to do it when somebody else did it. You don't have to do it how they did it. All you have to do is be you and be confident in that.
Let me ask you a follow-up question, because oftentimes the patience that comes with what you just said is difficult. Where do you find the patience with yourself to grow yourself?
Oh my gosh. That patience it has come over time. It really has. And you know what? Now that I think about it, that might be why I have 7 children, because there are things that I've wanted like right then. Like there are things that I wanted when I was a mom of 2. There are things that I wanted when I was the mom of 4. And God was just like, no, that's not happening right now. And so some of those things are just now happening, or started to happen when I was the mom of 6 or the mom of 7. And so it's like funny how God does things, because it's like the things that I wanted right then and there, God was like, no, you're not ready. And so it's also giving myself time, like even like with what Stacey was saying, like self-reflection, even asking myself, first of all, knowing that God is bigger than me. And so he knows when the perfect timing is, but asking myself, okay, well, did it not happen because I wasn't ready? What is it that really prevented me from doing something? Sometimes it was me, and sometimes it was God blocking it. And so I think it's just time. Time creates patience. Patience doesn't come overnight. That's why when people pray for patience, I don't pray for patience anymore, friends. I've been down that road. I know what patience looks like and what praying for patience looks like. And it's not easy. Once you start praying for something like that, God will make you work out your soul salvation when it comes to these types of things. And I'm tired of working out my soul salvation when it comes to patience. I paid my dues. And so I think it's really just knowing that patience takes time, and letting time have its way, and letting God have its way in the time clock.
That's one way to get out of paralysis analysis, is when you're looking at yourself and making that your only comparison. Pastor JT, talk to us about that for a moment. Give us your insight related to being able to keep your blinders on and in the lane where you are supposed to be.
Got you. I think I kind of go back and piggyback off of what Charlotte said. As a disclaimer, I don't want patience, because if Charlotte say that Patience got her 7 kids, I don't want no more patience. I'm going to be impatient for the rest of my life. I'm sorry. But to answer your question, I think keeping blinders on, it's something that was instilled in me as a young child, right? And I think that has a lot to do, and I applaud Charlotte, seriously, I applaud Charlotte for investing in her kids the way that she is, because a lot of it starts at home. We are, as you mentioned, Dr. Jacquie, we're the subtotal of our life experiences, but a great percentage of that is the house we came from, what we saw as a kid, what we heard in those formative years. I never forget my father. I had an opportunity when I was in high school, had an opportunity to go and meet Bill Clinton, who was the president at the time, and I was nervous. And I never forget, I called home. I was talking to my dad, and he was like, "Boy, what your voice shaking for?" So I'm like, "Well, Daddy, man, I'm nervous." And he was like, "Boy, your name is Jamel Johnson. And it's only one Jamel Johnson. When you go to that man, shake his hand, look at him in his eye, because he put his pants on one leg at a time, just like you. The only difference is he stay in a big white house and you stay in a house off a homestead." I thought about that. That seed that was planted in my life has caused me every day to want to be the best Jamel Johnson that I could be, because that alone, I am an original. I am an original. And if I try to be anybody else, at best, I'm going to be a good carbon copy of them. But this is the thing. Just going back to what Stacey said, I may not even want to be the copy that they are, because they may not even want to be the original that they are. So if we start this whole game of trying to cheat off of other people's paper, could you be looking at somebody else's paper, taking their answers and putting them on your test, and you get a flunking grade because you didn't know both of y'all had different tests? Mm-hmm. God was challenging you to be something and growing you to be something totally different than them. Maybe their ceiling was supposed to be working in the mailroom and your ceiling was supposed to be the CEO of the company. Mm-hmm. But because you wanted to copy off their page, you've limited your life and you didn't get a chance to graduate to who God always created you to be. So I would challenge anybody, just wake up in the morning wanting to be the best version of you. And when your last breath is breathed, man, you'll be able to go to glory knowing that you gave God all you had with the life that he gave you.
Absolutely. Dr. Tierney.
And that was probably the most perfect setup for what I was going to say. When we're talking about analysis paralysis and comparison, it really comes back to fear. Fear of being yourself. Fear of other people accepting you and you be you. So it's easier to compare yourself to other people and play Inspector Gadget into their lives than for you to start doing some investigation of your own life, investigating your own fears, your characteristics, your qualities, your talents, your insecurities, and really digging into that. I tell people all the time, I pay a high price to sit in this big yellow chair. Please don't covet this big yellow chair unless you're ready to pay the price. We look at the different platforms that people have on social media, not really knowing the price that they paid, because we really don't know that person because we really haven't done even the investigation into our own lives. So it's easier to say, oh, well, she on that because, she cute or she married or she went to the University of Miami, go Canes, or all these other things that we like to attribute as the reason why the person is where they are, instead of us actually looking at our own selves, looking at our own lives and actually doing the work. Roland actually put a post up. It was maybe a month ago or so now, but he made mention, he said so many people come to him with all these different ideas for shows and this and that. And so what he does, he just sits back and he watches them. He looks at their social media feed. He goes to their YouTube page. He watches what are they doing? Are they coming to him with these great ideas that they themselves aren't picking up the torch to run with it? And that's the thing that I want you to know. When we are busy comparing ourselves to other people in this analysis paralysis and we're not doing the work, the real movers and shakers, the real big moves that's happening, the people that really could put you on, they are watching you. They're not trying to see if you're being like someone else. They're not trying to see, you don't have to have 1 million followers, but they want to know, are you really doing the work? Do you really believe in you? Do you really believe in what God put on the inside of you? If not, they're going to pass you by and someone else is going to get the torch because they're ready to run with it. So always, 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 before we're sitting back wanting to compare the other people, do your own comparison, do your own investigation into here. Because I promise you, when you do that, the right people will see you and the right opportunities will find you. You won't ever have to go chase them down.
Amen. Absolutely. I think that was very well said. When we're back after the break, I'll give my reflection.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Welcome back, everyone. And as you can tell, we've put some great tips and tricks and tools into your Balanced Living Toolkit. Discovering how to balance your broken pieces does really require you to take a good introspective look at who you are as a person. not who you were told you could or couldn't be, not what somebody made you into becoming, but who are you deep down at your core. And then once you discover that about yourself, you're able to lay the proper foundation for the life that you were meant to live. That means taking all of your life experiences, the good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent, all the ones that made you fall out and cry at night. It takes all of that to become our best self. But in doing so, you really will build what was meant for you. And in that alone, you will be sustained as a person. Thank you all for watching. Bye now.